My guest today is Erik Sowinski. He is an incredible athlete, one of the top 800-meter guys in the world. And if I'm getting this right from like Wikipedia and stuff, you have some national championships to your name, even an American record in the 600 meter. Is that correct?
Yep, it's since been broken, but I'm the
Okay.
former American record holder. So
All right. Well, they're made to be broken. Erik, welcome to my vlog.
thanks for having me.
Now, if you are watching this and you're going, whoa, wait, 600 meters, Erik Sowinski, what is this? Um, uh, this is not your typical swimming episode. And Erik is not a swimmer. That's probably why you don't recognize his name. He is a runner. And if you're going, whoa, what does a running have to do with swimming? Hear me out. Don't X out of this. I think that there is a lot that we as swimmers can learn from other sports, especially track. And if you have been following my vlog, my journey, then you know I am passionate about this idea of training swimmers more holistically as athletes and not just as swimmers, because we historically have been really bad about focusing too much, too myopically on swimming and ignoring everything else as if it doesn't matter because swimmers are just this different species. We're not land mammals, so all that stuff doesn't apply. So I have asked Erik to come on and share his experiences and knowledge about track in the hopes that maybe I and you watching can pick up at least one nugget of knowledge, if not hopefully a few more than that. Because as we all know as athletes, all it takes sometimes is that one little bit of new knowledge, that one nugget to unlock a whole bunch of potential for us to get to the next level. So Erik, thank you again for joining us.
Of course.
So let's get right into this. I read your bio a bit and I saw that you are 32 years old, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, as you and I were talking about before, I'm 41. And so one of the things that really interests me is how athletes who are post-grads, after college, how they do what they do, and how is it different from when you were training as a college runner and even a high school runner? So at 32 now, how is it different from 22 and 18?
I think physically, we just have to be a little bit smarter about what we do and when we do it. Obviously, getting older and being an 800-meter runner, like it's still a pretty speed-based event in track and field. So I've been pretty fortunate that I've been pretty just fast in general throughout my career, and it's something that we've been able to maintain. So I can still do a lot of the workouts that I used to do when I was, 20, 21, 22 years old, but we have to be a little bit smarter about when we do them and how often we do them. So I've been with my same coach since 2008, since my freshman year. I'm at the University of Iowa. So just kind of having his guidance. I mean, he knows me really well as an athlete. So it's a big credit to him that I've been so consistent, since I started there. So yeah, like just getting older, we're just a little bit smarter about when we do things and how we do them. I think that's been the biggest thing.
Now, put it in perspective for me. It seems like track guys, the ages skew a bit older than you see in swimming. Like in swimming, it's early 20s, and then you got guys who keep going who are really talented, into their late 20s, maybe into their early 30s. But in this sport, the common thinking is basically once you're into your late 20s, well, let's say early 30s, you're done. You're over the hill and you're too old. But in track, it seems like you guys, I see a lot of 30-year-old guys out there. How does it look age-wise in track and field?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some similarities, I feel like. It's kind of funny. I mean, you have a lot of guys now who are like really young and super successful in track. I mean, my last couple races, I was racing against a couple guys who were like 17, 18 years old, which is kind of wild. But I would say, yeah, generally a lot of track and field athletes, especially men, you see them kind of peaking in their like mid to late 20s, but then you'll get even still a good amount of guys that are really successful, into their mid to late 30s even. So I
Yeah.
think that probably in general, there's probably a little bit more success later on in track and field than swimming. But it sounds like as far as like peak age, it sounds like they might be pretty similar from what I can tell.
Okay. And how has the mileage that you put in changed over the years from like college to now? Is it still basically the same amount of total miles per week, or have you adjusted that down?
So I think I was a pretty low mileage guy in high school. I didn't start running until my sophomore year. So I
Oh,
don't think
wow.
in high school I even ran more than maybe 20, 25 miles a week. And then in college, we just kind of increased that yearly and kind of the same thing my first couple years as a pro. I had a couple weeks where I got up near like 65 or 70 miles a week, and it just didn't go very well for me. I've just like I said, like I've always been really fast, and so speed has always been a focus of our training program. And so trying to do a lot of fast stuff with also a lot of mileage, I just was having a hard time recovering. So we've kind of trimmed that back maybe the last 5 or 6 years, and in the fall, winter, kind of our off season buildup, I'll get near 50, 55 miles a week average. But then when we get down into season when I'm competing, that could be as low as even 20 or 25 miles a week if I've got a couple competitions. So I'm definitely probably in the middle tier, I'd say, of like 800-meter athletes. I mean, you'll get some of these European guys who are still running like 100 miles a week as 800-meter guys, and then you've got a couple of also really really talented guys who will maybe run 10, 15 miles a week, but are just kind of freaks. So
Yeah, and see, that's one of the things I've wondered about track versus swimming. In swimming, it's pretty common to put up 45, 50 miles of swimming a week. And I mean, that's in line with what you do as a runner.
right.
And it takes us a lot longer to cover a mile than it does you. And so here we are, putting up as much mileage as somebody who runs. If somebody who runs a race that, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk to somebody who does an 800-meter race is because that's about the time that an average swimmer is racing. I think it takes you what, a minute and 40 some seconds.
Yeah, right around there.
Right. And so yeah, your typical swim race is anywhere from like 50 seconds ish to 2 minutes. And so I've always found it interesting that you've got runners who are able to cover obviously a mile much quicker than a swimmer. And here we are as swimmers doing the same amount of mileage. And I think the traditionalists would say, well, that's because runners that we're land mammals, so running translates easily for humans, but in the water that's a different element, and we have to make up for that by doing more swimming to like fix our DNA, or and it's like I don't buy that. I don't see why, when you're training for a race that only takes a minute or two, you have to train an insane amount of yardage. To me, it doesn't make sense. Um, but sorry, I digress. the when you're looking at a season, how does it take shape? Like I'm assuming you're a bit like a swimmer in that running never stops. You have indoor season, you have outdoor season, and you just go back and forth and back and forth. And but there's breaks between, right? Maybe a couple days or a week or two.
Yeah, so for us generally, like indoor season typically runs maybe like the at the end of January until early March. And then there'll be a break from early March till maybe the middle to late April. Then outdoor season will run kind of from late April all the way through September.
Okay.
And then kind of depending on the year, like if there's a world championship, if there's an Olympics, if there's European championships, like that also kind of um makes other breaks in the schedule for a couple weeks at a time, just because so many of these races are based in Europe, and so when the majority of athletes have a European championship, there's not really anything going on for American or African or Asian athletes. So
Yeah.
kind of depends a little bit by the year, just kind of what the breaks look like. But in general, like there's a big break between indoors and outdoors. Um, so if that
Now, when
makes
you say
sense.
break, I'm talking about a break in training. Are you talking
Oh
about a
yeah.
break in training?
So no, just a break in competition. So as far as training goes, like for me as an athlete, so we'll kind of do a like a base phase from usually like the beginning of October until January when I'll start my indoor season. And then
Okay.
that's kind of when we'll cut back on, we'll cut back on mileage. We'll do some more like faster intervals and stuff like that on the track. Then we'll get into racing, and I'll kind of do that from January and through March. And then from the middle of March until maybe late April, we'll kind of get back into another kind of like base phase. So
Yeah.
the way we've always done training is like, I'll try and peak for like a US indoor championships, and then I'll try and peak for a US outdoor championship. So we'll kind of try to do like two peaks and then kind of maintain throughout that. But like me personally, like I race a lot compared to most 800-meter guys. Like it's not anything for me to race, 30 plus times a year, whereas
Oh, wow.
some of these other guys will race, maybe 10 times. But just kind of something like I enjoy the competitive aspect, and kind of I also get a lot out of racing. Like it just seems to help me
Yeah.
in training and racing. So
Right. And I mean, in swimming, you have to race. The way you race is different than the way you practice. And you have to race in order to understand where you're at, what you're good at, what you're bad at, and then go make adjustments. And there's nothing, you can't simulate racing in practice. You have to get out there in order to race, you have to practice racing. And so I'm with you. Although in swimming we don't have that many opportunities, like 30 opportunities a year to race, but I try to race about 15 times a year, and that's a little bit on the high side. Now, when you talk about base building, when you come back, let's say after a little break, maybe a few days off or something from a season, because you just had your big, let's say US indoor championships. Um, do you ease back into it very gently, like with drills and some prehab and some very low mileage, and then ramp it up, or how does that look?
yeah, so kind of after the entire season ends in September, like me, like I'll usually take about a week or 10 days completely off now. It's just kind of
Okay.
something that I've gotten, like my body and mentally, I've just kind of need that after going for 9 months straight. So like generally I'll take like 10 days off, and then, I'll start running every day, but it'll just be like, 3-4 miles, just easy running for a week or two. And that's kind of when we also start like reintroducing getting in the weight room. So like the weight room is a big thing for me, so I'm in there 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And then kind of after like 2-3 weeks of just running and lifting, then I'll get back on the track and start doing like some lighter speed stuff and whatnot. But as far as like prehab and all that stuff kind of goes, like I've got the same routine I do every single day, so that really doesn't change for me at all during the year. So it's more
Yeah.
just like the workouts transitioning from like a base phase of just running, and then we'll get into some faster stuff after getting that base underneath us.
Yeah. How big is like drill work and technical work in what you do?
Big, and I think it's big for a lot of 800 runners because it's such a fast race yet. Like there's a huge speed aspect. So before any day that I'm on the track, like I do the same dynamic warm up and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, but even then, like we're doing a lot of I don't know if you know like wickets or acceleration lines or anything like that, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like a so like I'll do a lot of that. I'll do a lot of like hops and bounds and a lot of like plyometric stuff. Just kind of so like our big thing has always been like what's the lowest hanging fruit that I can grab to still improve. And for me, like speed has always been that thing. So like it's kind of funny, a lot of distance runners like hate to say that they're doing speed work for some reason, because I don't know if like people translate that to like I'm peaking at this point. But I mean, we start speed from the first week of practice, and I'm doing speed days on the track every week. So
Yeah. Every swimmer's dream is to be a 50 freestyler and have, those easy splash workouts where they get wet and they go home. That's the perception of sprinters and swimming. And everybody has that dream, even the milers. but there are very few who can pull it off. And so you said like 3 to 4 miles, in the beginning, a week, or sorry, a day, just kind of easing back into it. Then once after the first couple of weeks, and you're really like, when you're in the thick of it, the hardest training, you said you're doing maybe 50 miles a week.
Between 50 and 60, somewhere in that range. So
Okay. And now what do, to me, track always seems so similar because, we're either running or swimming similar distances, right? You're swimming the 200 meter, you're running the 200 meter. And so, in my mind, I think a lot of swimmers' minds, like, okay, track athletes probably train the same way. They do 10 200s on like 2 minutes and 30 seconds or what. That's a very typical swimming set. What does it look like what does a tough set look like for you?
so that'll still kind of depend on like the time of year. So if we're in like a build up, like my long workout on the track could be something like do a lot of like 600. So maybe do like a 600, take 3 minutes rest, and then do three 300s with 90 seconds rest. And we'll kind of do multiple sets of that. So that'll kind of be like the longer intervals that I'll do on the track. And then as we transition to like later in the year, like one of our main workouts before any race I do is we'll run 3 sets of 200s with 75 seconds rest between the reps, and then like 5 minutes between the sets. And I'll generally do that at like what my race pace is going to be. So that's kind of a big one when we'll get into that. And then there's sometimes during the year, like we'll do like a 400, 300, 400, 300 with like 6 to 8 minutes rest. And those reps are like pretty close to all out. So I would say like
Wow.
that kind of workout is like the most intense that we'll do during the year, where I've got, 4 reps that are like at my race pace or faster.
Gotcha. Now, it doesn't sound like you do much of what swimmers do, which is really tight interval touch. We call it touch and go kind of swimming, where you might do 50 100s on a minute, and you're coming in at 58 seconds, seeing that kind and going, damn it, and just going. That you don't do a lot of that.
No, I know there are some athletes who do some work like that, where they'll do like having to cover a 200 in 30 seconds, but however you want to do it is how you want to do it. But as far as like our training goes, like we don't do a lot of stuff like that. But I do know that there are athletes that do similar things in the track and field world.
Huh. Now, I guess I'm curious, is it common to see that kind of stuff, or are those guys kind of outliers?
Probably more outliers than not. But I guess I also don't know like exactly how a lot of athletes do their training. Like obviously like there's guys that'll run, 20 by 400 off of a minute rest, but I wouldn't say that they're trying to like they're not doing it like, oh, I have to be starting a rep every 2 minutes, if that makes sense. So if I run one in 50 seconds, I get a minute 10 rest. Or if I run it in a minute 30, then I only get 30 seconds rest. So I think that's what you're saying that you guys would do, right?
Yeah, I mean, what we do, excuse me, it's very interval, firm, specific. Like you stick to the interval, and if it's 3 minutes, whatever it is, then and you get a minute rest, great. If you get 30 seconds rest, that's what you get. Like that's what you get, but it sounds like a lot of what you do is more like you get a set amount of rest, and it's not, okay, this is the interval.
Yeah. So like we'll do like a lot of things where it's like, hey, I'll run 8 by 400, and the goal is to run somewhere between start at maybe 62, get down to 58, but I'll have like a static 1 minute rest throughout the entire workout. So we just
Mhm.
do a lot of like the rest is pretty set.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Interesting. And how much warm, like for those big practices, how much warm up are you doing to before you do something like that?
It's probably a solid hour.
Oh, wow.
Um, so I'll do generally like a 10 to 15 minute jog, and then I've kind of just got the same like dynamic stuff that I'll do, like the same stretching routine that I'll do, and then we'll do some like faster accelerations and stuff to like kind of prime for getting ready do that first rep. Because I mean, for us, like a lot of these big races, like there's races where they call us into, you know, the call room 40 minutes before the race. So you kind of have to get like you've got to get warmed up before you get into that call room, because sometimes it's this like 10 foot by 10 foot box that you're in, and that you can't do a whole heck of a lot while you're in there. So yes, it's a lot of just kind of like playing with what works. But I would say generally for like a big workout or a race, somewhere between an hour and 70 minutes is kind of my sweet spot for warming up.
Wow. Okay. Now that you brought up something that I hadn't put on my list of questions, but it's a really good one. 40 minutes is how long you're forced to be kind of, uh, out of warm up before a race. But swimmers typically we shoot, typically the standard is like 30 minutes. You finish your warm up and you want it to be 30 minutes before you race. I skew more to like 40 or 45 minutes. But is where do you fall on that? Like, are you good with 40 minutes? Is that a really good number for you, or do you wish it was less?
If I'm not able to do much, like I'd prefer it to be somewhere probably in that like 15 to 20 minute range.
Oh, okay.
Um, just for me, like being able to, you know, kind of like do some strides, do some accelerations. Like I don't like being cooped up, and I feel like I don't stay as warm if I've got that kind of extended period. So yeah, for me, like 15, 20 minutes would probably be perfect in my eyes, but logistically it doesn't work like that. So
Right, right. Now you do have some swimmers who they like to get out of the pool and right up on the block, and just boom, straight to it. Um, okay, so going back to your training, um, I want to know more about lifting. How many times a week do you lift?
3 times. So I'll do that generally Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which also lines up with like my harder workouts on the track.
Okay, and does it alternate at all, like upper, lower, upper, or is it full body?
They're usually full body, but Monday, Friday is more like faster and heavier. So we'll do a lot of like cleans and snatch and squats and stuff like that. A lot of the Olympic lifts are Monday, Friday, and then Wednesday for me is generally more of like a full body circuit. So
Interesting. Okay, so more of a circuit. So is that like more endurance based for you?
yeah, so we'll do anywhere from like 2 to 3 sets of. It's usually like maybe like this. So we'll pick like 3 lower body, 3 upper body, 3 core exercises, and we'll run through that circuit like 3 times. So
Oh, okay, okay. And now, if you had like, if there were two or maybe three movements in the weight room that you absolutely would never give up if you were changing what you were doing, what would those be?
um, hang clean for me would probably be number one. I just feel like with running and kind of like the just like extension you get through that, like I feel like for me it just I've I've never been hurt more than 2 days in a row. I've never missed more than 2 days in a row of running throughout my entire career. And I think
Wow.
that that's really just a credit to like a lot of the stuff we do in the weight room. Like I'm really strong. Like posterior chain has always been really strong. I think that cleans, like I've been able to develop that the last, you know, decade. And so I think that's probably been the biggest one for me would be that. We also do a lot of single leg stuff, like a single leg RDL with dumbbells. I think especially in a lot of like sprinters, mid distance guys, you do see a lot of like hamstring injuries. But I think
Yeah.
that that exercise that we do has really, you know, helped prevent that for me. And then trying to think what the last one would be. Um, Probably just like a squat or a leg press. I think that's just always been a pretty solid movement for me. Just kind of in that same thing of, you know, that posterior chain, glutes, hamstrings, just keeping that strong for me has always been huge. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Excuse me. How in track, like in swimming, all kinds of sets and practices, and sometimes you're focusing on the legs only, or the arms only, or you're focusing on the first part of your race or the second part of your race. What are the things that you do to focus on like early speed?
so for me, like Mondays every week, it's like our fastest workout is like true speed. So like that could be anywhere from me running as low as like 30-meter reps up the way all the way up to like 200-meter reps. So like, there's some practices where we'll do, just 10 by 30 meters off of really, really short rest. That's kind of just working on, getting out that first, couple steps of the race.
Right.
So we'll do a lot of like faster stuff with really short rest is like how my speed days will go a lot of the time. So sometimes I'll run, 4 sets of 4 times 60 meters off of 45 or a minute rest. So but those are like 95% effort.
Huh. Okay. So 4 times 4 sets. So after you get through 4 sets, you take a big break.
Yeah, so after 4 reps, take maybe 5 or 6 minutes is generally like a set rest for us, and then go back into another 4 by 60 meters.
Okay. Okay. Um, and then how do you train closing speed?
So we'll do these things that my coaches always called in and outs, and we'll kind of do those on the same day. Like it'll be also on a speed day. Obviously, not the same day. We'd be doing like the 60 meters. Like this would be a separate workout, but we'll do like maybe like 150-meter reps, where the first 50 meters will be fast, then the next 50 meters will still be fast, but we're like pulling back just a little bit, and then the last 50 meters trying to turn over and get faster from the 50 meters before that. So kind of like a fast slow fast, and working on that change of gears and closing a race fast. So that's always been a kind of a cornerstone to a lot of stuff that we do.
Okay. Yeah. Actually sounds a bit similar to swimming. And sorry, jumping around a bit, but going back to the weight room, when you guys are doing reps of let's say squats or cleans or whatever it may be, um, is there a typical number of reps, or is it periodized where it's like more reps early in the season and then you get down higher weight, lower reps later in the season, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's definitely periodized, like as far as weight goes, and even just in like how the tempo of the reps go. So like in fall and winter, as we're leading up, like we'll do a lot of tempo squats, like 3 to 5 seconds down and then like 1 second up. So kind of just working on that muscular endurance in the weight room. Whereas when we get later into like competition season, it'll maybe be 2 or 3 sets of 2 to 3 reps, but it's going to be heavyweight and it's just a normal squat. So.
Huh. Okay. And so just for to clarify for folks listening, 3 to 5 seconds down means you're slowly easing into your squat, takes about 3 to 5 seconds, and then you
Yep. And
spring
then you're
back up.
firing up out of that. Yep. And then you're going right back down 3 to 5 seconds right after that
Interesting.
burst up. Yeah.
That sounds, I mean, I've never tried anything like that. The closest I've come is like a box squat where I sit and I hold it for 2 seconds and then fire up to overcome that initial acceleration. But I've never done a controlled descent. What do you feel that works?
I think like muscular endurance in the weight room, like it works that, and also just kind of getting that like that like prolonged elongation of those muscles, I think is huge. Just getting that strength. And so like we'll do the same thing as far as like single leg RDLs go. Like I'll hold 30 to 50 pound dumbbells depending on the time of the year, and we'll go 3 to 5 seconds down per rep, and then fire back up. So we do a lot of we do a lot of like single leg and tempo stuff in the weight room. I think that's really helped me.
That sounds brutal.
Yeah, it's rough. We had a couple times, man. I was trying to think, it was like 2013 to 2015, in the weight room we did a lot of, they were like goblet squats. So I'd stand on 2 benches and hold a dumbbell between my arms, and it'd be like 5 seconds down, 5 seconds up, but we do it for like 2 minutes. It was like 2 minutes at a time. That was the
Oh,
hardest thing I think I've ever done in the weight room. So
oh, yeah, that sounds awful. I've done one-legged squats, and they're my least favorite thing to do, um, which probably means they're the best thing. But oh, it's just brutal.
yeah.
Um, so okay, well that's cool. I may ask my strength guy about doing that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so moving into, let's talk about taper. Um, when you're approaching, let's say, national championships, um, how long is your rest period? taper period?
For us, it's usually like 10 days. So like like coach's thing has always been like not to race like the 10 days leading up to US championship. And so we
Right.
just kind of have a couple of like key like faster race pace workouts that he likes to do in that period, and just like, lessen the volume on our easy days even, and just kind of getting ready for that. So yeah, for me it's generally been about 10 days.
Huh. Okay. And so, but it sounds like in those 10 days, you're, is it pretty much like every day you've got some kind of race pacey kind of workout, or do you have days where you just show up, you kind of jog around a few times and go home?
It's probably like every other day we're doing something faster. And then in those days in between, it's either like, hey, maybe I'm just going out for an easy 30-minute jog, or maybe we're doing some like slower tempo reps on the track. Is kind of like an easy day for me too. So probably every other day is kind of that race pace thing leading into like a US champs.
Oh, okay. Okay. And what does a race pace set for you look like? Because in swimming, there is something officially called race pace training. And I don't know if you've heard of this,
No.
but it's pretty wild. It's kind of out there, but it's stuff like 30-50s, as fast as you can go, holding race pace on something that gives you about 25 seconds rest. And then once you miss the time that you're supposed to go by more than, let's say, half a second, you skip the next one and pick it up on the one after that and keep going. And it's a brutal workout, but it doesn't sound like that's so much what you're doing.
No, so ours is more just kind of like maintaining that rhythm. So for me, like it could be 3 sets of 5 times 100 meters, and those
Oh,
reps would be like a minute rest. And then maybe, we take that normal 5 to 6 minutes between the sets, or maybe we'll do 3 sets of 3 200s or something like that. So
at
um,
800 pace?
at 800 pace, correct.
Okay. Okay. Um, Now I'm curious, in swimming there, if you want to really get a room of coaches fired up, you just say the word taper, and or swimmers for that matter, and it'll go for days. Because there's all kinds of schools of thought. I mean, I rest for 6 weeks, 6 weeks of mostly showing up, swimming a few hundred meters, and going home, and that's just crazy. The standard is about 2 weeks, which is kind of close to what you do. But in track, do you get that spectrum of people that are like 2 weeks, 6 weeks?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think especially as you like go up in distance, like when you get some of these athletes running like 5K, 10K, like you'll have some of them that won't race for 2 or 3 months leading up to a major championship, and some that are racing, 10 days leading up. So I think that the higher you get is probably a little bit more deviation in the taper. I think just because, especially like an 800, like guys still need to be pretty sharp in the
Mm,
800. So you want to be doing some racing leading up to that.
yeah,
Because for us, so it's like when you get to a US championship, it's 3 races in 4 days. So you still need to make sure that you're pretty fit and you're pretty sharp, because it's
right,
pretty cutthroat.
right. Now that's really interesting. It almost sounds like the opposite of swimming, because in swimming, the distance guys rest way less. Your milers and stuff. It's not uncommon that they do like a week of rest, and that's about it. And then the sprinters are the ones, especially with the guys who have more muscle, the bigger, heavier ones. They're the ones where you'll see the deviation, and it'll be guys who do 3, 4, even 5 weeks of resting. But it sounds like it's flipped.
So I think during season it's kind of flipped. So like like the sprinters are, they're racing all the time, whereas distance runners kind of pick and choose their races. But I think when you get
Mm.
into like an off season for us, like the sprinters take a lot more time off in the off season compared to
Oh,
like a distance runner. Um, so I would say that is similar, but like in season, it sounds like it might be a little flipped compared to a lot of swimmers.
interesting. So they take longer breaks where they just don't show up at practice.
So like I know a lot of sprinters that'll take 8 to 12 weeks of just doing nothing
What?
after a season. So yeah,
Yeah. That is wild.
yeah.
You, you you won't find anybody doing that in swimming. Even though I mean, there are times where people get injured or just mentally they're like, dude, I am fried and I need a break. And they take 2 months off and they come back. Yeah, it sucks coming back, getting into shape, and it takes a while, but they're way better off for it, having taken that break. Um, so there's something to it, but that's interesting. My vlogs have covered a lot on hydration and nutrition. And I think it's pretty standard, I guess, across sports. But I'm curious, so when you are hydrating, like I work with a nutritionist, and she has told me that I need to be consuming about 120 ounces of water a day, which is like just a constant fire hose of drinking and peeing and drinking and peeing. Um, and all I drink is water. But as a runner, like, what do you hydrate with, and how much are you trying to consume? Do you do any sports drinks, anything like that?
So like during like training and stuff, like normally I'll just do water, and I'm similar to you, like in that 100 ounces per day, kind of somewhere in that range. But obviously, like as we get into like summer and competition season, when I'm sweating more and losing more, like I'll do a Gatorade after I like have a hard workout or a race, just to kind of like replenish some of that kind of stuff, but nothing super specific for me. Like I don't follow a huge routine. I just know like, hey, I need to drink 3 of these Nalgene's throughout the day, and that kind of works out pretty well for me. So
What about supplements, like whether it's protein or creatine, or is there anything in particular you found that works well?
I'll do like some protein and like a smoothie just after most of my workouts. But I don't supplement with a lot of other stuff just because I'm kind of paranoid and our drug testing is so strict. So like
Yeah,
for I don't know, I guess I don't know how it is in swimming for a lot of athletes, but for us, like we plug into our calendar like where we're gonna be every day at what times, and if they come to show up to drug test you, they come to show up to drug test you. So
right.
yeah, so I just and I mean I know a lot of these supplements are super clean and they're certified by all of these, labs, organizations, but for me, like if I can get it out of the food that I'm eating, I'd prefer to do it that way. So
Yeah, yeah. And you guys don't do anything crazy like shaving your body or
there's some athletes that do. There's some runners that they'll shave their legs, shave their arms. They think it's going to give them a bit of an advantage, but not
but
the
okay,
not the bulk.
explain this to me. So it sounds like you've got a like both ends of the spectrum. You've got people who like go super overboard and get every last hair on their body, kind of like swimming. And then you've got people. I watch TV, I watch the Olympics, and see people with big heads of hair that just like flow down behind them, and they've got necklaces and all this stuff. Like, how does that work? Like that's got to be drag, right?
Right? Like I feel like mentally everything is saying that if they got rid of that, they would run faster. But I don't know why some people don't do it.
Well, I guess you got to look good doing it. In swimming, nobody can see you, so what does it matter?
True.
um, okay, let's see. What other questions? Oh, I guess curious. So, I mean, you're 32. You're out of college. What do you do outside? Is running like your sole profession? Is there anything else you do?
So it has been my sole profession for the last like 8 or 9 years. Right out of college, like before I got any sort of sponsorship, I was working at a local running store like 30, 35 hours a week. So I was doing that kind of part time. But I think since probably like 2014, 2015, that this is all that I've done professionally. So
Okay, okay. And so now, do you like live with other runners, or is it just you?
out of college, I was living with like 4 college friends. We were living in a college house, paying $400 a month each for rent, just kind of trying to scrape by. But yeah, so since 2015, I kind of moved out of that, and I've had my own place. So
Okay. Okay.
one of the perks of living in the Midwest, though, is that it's
Yeah.
not super expensive to do that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I bet Denver is a bit cheaper. Sorry, a bit more expensive.
yeah, for sure. So that's been a bit of an adjustment. So
Yeah. Now, where in Denver? Because I have in-laws who live there.
so right now we're like in West Arvada, so we're like 20 minutes west of Denver, kind of right near Golden.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
so we're like 10-15 minutes from the foothills of the mountains. So it's a pretty cool area.
Now, do you do cross training with skiing or snowboarding?
I
Or will you be?
haven't.
I guess, will you be?
I would like to do some cross country skiing, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
I broke my ankle twice in high school, so kind of doing any of like the skiing, snowboarding, that kind of stuff, I'll probably wait until I'm done running. So
That's probably for the best. I remembered my last question for you. And it all has to do with recovery and kind of the prehab. Um, for me, like I have this nightly routine that goes along with my like, so I have activation that is before all my workouts, kind of like you, just making sure that everything is warmed up really well and ready to go, preventing injury. But then every night I go through about 40 minutes of foam rolling and stretching and massaging and cupping and all these things. Do you have something similar?
it's funny you say that. So that's like whenever I have any, high school, college athletes, anything, kind of ask like what has made you successful for such a long period of time. Like I do the same routine. Like I've had the same routine I do. For me, it's only like 15 minutes. But no matter where I am, if I'm in the off season, if I'm at home, or if I'm, overseas racing, like I still have the same routine that I do before bed every day. It's kind of just like a stretch, a foam roll, just that kind of thing. I think that that's really helped me stay healthy and be able to be competitive for as long as I have.
Yeah.
It's not as kind of like it's funny, like when you get to be at such a high level, it's like trying to figure out what the things that other people aren't doing consistently is kind of how you're able to get that edge, right? So I think for me, it's
Right.
just been like, what can I do to make sure that I'm healthy day in and day out? Because then I can kind of build those building blocks of training, since I'm not missing any practices or competitions due to any injury. So yeah, I've got the same kind of routine that I've done all the time before bed. So
Right. Great. And is it the same in swimming where it's really hard to get the young athletes to buy into hydrating and stretching and foam and all that stuff?
yeah, 100%. I think it's like it gets easier when they've tasted a little bit of success and they want to do what they can to maintain that. But I think that, getting just the general athlete to buy in and realize that, hey, all these little things, if I do them day in and day out, like they will truly compound and help me so much down the road. But, getting athletes to buy into that can be a struggle for sure.
Yeah. See, when you're 41 years old, you're desperate for anything and everything, and you'll do whatever it takes so long as it doesn't kill you until after your career is over.
I can appreciate that.
Well, Erik, thank you so much for taking the time. I wish you all the best with your career, and I mean, shoot, the trials will be here before we know it. I'm sure you're heading that way, and I wish you all the best with that. I hope you make it.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be following you too. So thanks for having me.
Thanks. I need all the love I can get.
Always.